answers and solutions that we all need and that our students are trained to find and to stand up for what they believe and to promote freedom around the world. When I contacted Brit in the fall, as we were trying to negotiate dates and topics, we brainstormed a few ideas, Hayek, Milei, Trump. We ended up agreeing to have all of it. So I'll give you in the next 40 minutes 3 mini lectures on Hayek, Milei, and Donald Trump. Last year, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Hayek's Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences. Same year, we also marked 80 years since the great Austrian economist published his global bestseller, The Road to Serfdom. This book, by the way, solidified my intention to pursue an economics degree. I was visiting relatives in New York City and visited a university, and one of the faculty gave me a copy of that book to take home. Now, this book came out during the rise of Clement Attlee in the United Kingdom and of Juan Perón in Argentina. Just as Hayek predicted, implementing socialistic policies of government growth soon diminished their people's freedoms and ruined their economies. Britain's Labour Party nationalized all key industries. The government took away their citizens' health care and retirement choices. In just half a lifetime, the birthplace of modern capitalism and the 19th century global economic superpower went into a sharp decline. Living standards in the United Kingdom were forecast to go down to those in Albania, the most backward communist country in Europe. The sad experiment with democratic socialism lasted 34 years, when the British people voted for Margaret Thatcher. She started a new capitalist revolution as the Conservative Party's prime minister in 1979. Allegedly, the Iron Lady placed the road to serfdom on the table at her first cabinet meeting with the words, "This is what we believe." A year later, America elected Ronald Reagan, whose reforms unleashed free enterprise to restore our prosperity. Hayek was blessed to witness the collapse of the Soviet Union and the triumph of his ideas. The Argentinians suffered for another 44 years. In 2023, they finally abandoned their road to serfdom and elected a libertarian president. Javier Milei campaigned with a chainsaw, I'm sure you've all seen that, a symbol of his dedication to Hayek's principles of limited government and free enterprise. In America, the 2020s were reminiscent of the late 1970s, when socialistic policies had generated rapid inflation and economic stagnation. The voters had to take it upon themselves to stop this decline. A year after the rise of Milei, Trump was hired by the American people to restore our greatness. Some see his return to the White House as the second coming of Reagan. I already made a joke about that. In his first few weeks, our president went all in, using Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency as a flamethrower to annihilate the unconstitutional bureaucratic agencies and unchain the American entrepreneurs, innovators, and wealth creators. This is what I've been ranting for 15 years as a professor. I finally get it. In his book, The Fatal Conceit, Hayek explains, the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design. Mic drop. This is the quote that Trump should use in his eulogy to the administrative state. To achieve America's full potential, we need to humble our political elites and unchain the entrepreneurial men and women. It's not that the swamp residents are inherently evil, even if their efforts were selfless, guided by an intention to serve the common good, and not in the pursuit of power, wealth, or prestige, they will inevitably backfire. The complexity of real-world economic systems, unlike our textbook models, vastly exceeds the ability of any central planner to evaluate all relevant data and predict the consequences of all their actions. When Hayek accepted his Nobel Prize, he gave a lecture, and you can grab a copy on the way out. We have a few copies left, and Barbara has some more in her bag, I'm sure. His topic of choice was the pretense of knowledge. This is what he said: to act on the belief that we possess the knowledge and the power which enable us to shape the processes of society entirely to our liking. Knowledge, which in fact we do not possess, is likely to make us do much harm. 3 decades before that, in his famous article, The Use of Knowledge in Society, we torture all our students with this in our philosophy of the American enterprise system. It's a chapter in the book, When Free to Choose. 3 decades before this Nobel Prize, in this article, Hayek examined the fundamental economic problem that we must solve to secure beneficial and efficient utilization of our scarce resources. Even today, many are still misled to see it as a matter of optimization, using complex mathematics to determine the allocation of inputs and outputs based on statistical information in an attempt to maximize social welfare. That, explains Hayek, is a naive and dangerous approach to the economy. The data for such economic calculus can never be given to a single mind or a group of experts. The real task is one of providing opportunities for all individuals to utilize huge amounts of widely diffused information. The tragedy of all economic planners, and the much bigger tragedy of the people in their countries, is that they do not understand the nature of knowledge needed for their schemes to succeed. Unorganized knowledge of unique circumstances of time and place is scattered among billions of individuals. For a rational economic order to evolve, people must be free to use the resources known to them in an ever-changing environment for ends whose relative importance is also known only by them. The problem is how to secure the most efficient use of knowledge not given to anyone in its totality. Fortunately for mankind, we have stumbled upon a mechanism that allows us to do just that. We have all learned to use the price system, even though most individuals do not understand and, let's face it, do not care to find out how it emerged or how it works. The market mechanism has evolved without design. It has no man-made purpose, and there is no benevolent expert in charge of it. Yet, it solves problems that no bureaucratic agency can solve by rulemaking. The unplanned use of this simple tool in the pursuit of personal goals created conditions for a global division of labor and generated amazing prosperity for billions of people. The beauty of the free enterprise system is that it dispenses with the need for conscious control. The market is like a healthy human breathing. It works well even if you do not think about it. It works well when you sleep. And you do not need an agency to regulate it. Now, I forgot to mention something. When I was growing up as a kid, I read this book by Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer. And one story I loved the most. It's when Tom does something, he gets punished to paint a fence, and he figures a way to convince other people, his friends, to paint the fence for him. And so I've been using the same thing over and over. Every year when I have to deliver a lecture on something, I create incentives through grades, graded assignments, for all my students to do the research. So Everything that I'm delivering to you today, guys, is a product of 140 students who labored hard in the fall of last year and in the spring of this year to dig up all this. My daughter, who works for Johnst, also did some research on both Hayek and Milei. So I don't take any credit for what I'm delivering. I'm just the messenger. Now, the eyes of every libertarian who embraces the principles that I just outlined from Hayek are now turned to Argentina, of all places. In just 15 months as president, Milei has done a lot to make his mentor Hayek proud. 100 years ago, Argentina used to be one of the wealthiest and freest countries in the world. But years of big government and high inflation left it one of the poorest and least free. By 2023, this repressed country ranked 145th out of 184 countries on the Index of Economic Freedom. And things were not getting better. Argentina was a warning to the United States and Europe. Then came 2023, and their people elected a libertarian president. Milei campaigned on a promise of fiscal restraint. He brandished a chainsaw to illustrate how much government needs to be cut. In the United States, politicians who promise less spending rarely win votes. Milei won in a landslide. Immediately, his election faced a lot of scrutiny. Experts and the legacy media trashed him. Most expected him to fail. Economists warned electing far-right Milei would spell devastation for Argentina, wrote The Guardian. BBC noted, many predecessors have tried and failed to turn the economy around. Javier Milei will be no exception. Milei immediately started to prove them wrong. An observer noted, he was the first politician in generations to talk to Argentinians as though they were adults. Milei told people that the government has no money of its own, that whatever it spends, it takes from them. The Washington Post said, Argentina's firebrand new president-elect is pushing a disastrous old agenda. Disastrous? Really? When Milei came into power, there was 40% poverty rate. There was an annual inflation of over 200%. The media said Milei can't fix that. Some called him a snake oil salesman. Within just 1 year, inflation is down. The economy started to recover in the second part of 2024, way before what most people expected. Monthly inflation at the start of his presidency was about 25%. In October of last year, prices rose just 2.7%. Milei is showing that Hayek's ideas are working. He got rid of 9 ministries and cut government spending by 30%. He's also fired thousands of government workers and cut subsidies in energy, transportation, and gas. Milei's deregulation ministry has shut down more than 200 government offices. 2 deregulations per day since he's been in office. That's remarkable, but I think Trump can do easily better. For the first time in more than a decade, Argentina has a budget surplus. I doubt that we'll see it in America anytime soon. I hope I'm wrong. Some of the biggest cuts Milei made was to the pension system. He vetoed the Senate's attempt to increase spending on pensioners. He also ended many public infrastructure projects. With some of Milei's policies, the good was felt right away. Rent controls in Argentina had caused a shortage of apartments. When Milei lifted rent controls, the supply of apartments in Argentina tripled, and their prices fell about half. That's what economists like me have been teaching for decades. You get rid of price controls, entrepreneurs make more of it, and that reduces prices for us, the consumers. The international press started to catch up. We've got to take this guy seriously. This stuff is working. Argentina still has big problems. Inflation is down, but still high. There's still a lot of poverty. The tariffs make consumer goods expensive. An 800 iPhone in the US would cost almost $3,000 there. Argentina still has a long way to go. That's why Milei recently said that what's coming is the deep chainsaw. That means even less government. What if we could do that in America? Our government has only been getting bigger. But now, Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency want to make Milei-style cuts in the United States. In his first year as president, Milei has shown that cuts are possible. As he's wielded the chainsaw and cut government from all sides, he's actually gained popularity. Even skeptical voters have warmed up to him. A year into his reforms, his approval ratings rose by 12 points. It seems that Hayek's ideas do work. Can America learn from that? Well, it depends mainly on one guy for now, Donald J. Trump. Why did he win in 2024? Why did he lose in 2020? Or did he? The answer to both questions is the same. In the immortal words of Bill Clinton, the economy is stupid. Frustrated by unemployment during the COVID restrictions and by recent inflation, voters demanded changes in both of these election cycles. From abolishing CRT, ESG, DEI, and the media censorship to the war on big pharma and big food, from ending the Department of Education and returning responsibility over schooling to the states and to the people, from withdrawing support of supranational institutions such as the World Health Organization to altering environmental standards in the pursuit of energy independence and dominance, analysts argue about the costs and benefits of individual policies, yet they all see Trump as the greatest disruptor who ever sat in the Oval Office. On his way to the White House in 2016, Trump marginalized the Republican establishment. With his second coming, he's pulling the rug out from under the Democratic gerontocracy. Basically, we only have two parties now, the MAGA party and the anti-MAGA party. Led by Trump, the GOP seems to be going back to the 19th century economic nationalist roots, supported by many middle-income workers. This gives the opposition a choice, tough one, between returning to their liberal foundations or completing their recent partial metamorphosis and becoming socialist. Trump is acutely aware that his legacy rests on providing sustainable prosperity as done by Reagan, the president he often emulates. Accomplishing such a goal requires reforms that will result in the growth of nominal income significantly outpacing the inflation rate. Hence, his top legislative priority, it's happening right now, is extending and expanding the tax cuts from his first term. The best reform would be, of course, to abolish all taxes on production, replacing them with a consumption tax. Now, if the fair tax proposal, that also eliminates the IRS, does not find enough support in Congress, Trump could push for a flat tax. What a novel idea. Applied to all income above the poverty level, with no loopholes. What about Trump's trade policies, you say? Well, these are a bit more controversial than the idea to let every worker and entrepreneur keep what they earn. Threats of tariffs may force both friends and foes to behave in ways that benefit America. Imposing them, however, will not only hurt the consumer, it will destroy more jobs than we can protect. Trump's immigration policies, I just talked about it in Ottawa, Kansas, where the Northwood team won first place in the Politics, Philosophy, and Economics League. Yay. Trump's immigration policies that we discussed, they could also be problematic. Deporting Hamas terrorist sympathizers, murderers, rapists, thieves, and human traffickers is one thing. Sending away millions of those who come to pick our strawberries in California or clean rooms in our motels may lower our economy's efficiency and offset some of the benefits of Trump's tax cuts. Some argue for border restrictions by noting that in a welfare state, Milton Friedman did it 50 years ago, if you have welfare state and then you open the border, freeloading foreigners will rob our citizens and legal residents. Of course, we can solve this by ending redistribution. There are, they say, 2 ways to enslave a person: work him without pay or pay him without work. Handouts never lifted anyone out of poverty. According to the CBO, the poverty level is $15.6 thousand. We spend twice as much per every individual in poverty. And we still have almost 36.8 million Americans classified as poor. Our biggest long-term crisis, however, is the multi-trillion-dollar debt accumulated by the federal government since FDR. The problem will never be solved unless we tackle the 2 sacred cows: Social Security and Medicare. What shall we do? We may be forced to raise the Social Security age. France did it. We could stop subsidizing healthcare for wealthy retirees like Trump. Some recommend raising extra tax revenue by issuing work visas to millions of young, healthy, motivated, well-educated, and highly productive immigrant entrepreneurs and workers. Elon Musk is for that. We could rely on DOGE to shut down the unconstitutional bureaucratic agencies, save the taxpayers from funding their salaries and benefits, release those people to productive activities to generate wealth in the private sector, sell the government buildings, remove the red tape they left behind, and have trillions of dollars wasted in compliance costs move to areas that boost economic growth. Ideally, Trump will consider the Chilean model of Jose Piñera, our friend that we toured together in Europe last spring, offering all citizens private alternatives to the federal old age programs. Bill Clinton was about to spearhead this reform when his career was derailed by a sex scandal. If the idea can resonate with a Democratic president, it can be implemented by a Republican with bipartisan support. None of those reforms, however, offers a permanent solution to the fiscal irresponsibility of our political elites. It's time that we learn to live within our means at the federal level of government as we do at the state level and local level. We need a constitutional amendment that prevents Congress from running deficits. With Don's generous support, we actually have a video produced by Dr. McAvee on that topic. Imagine giving power back to the people by placing effective constraints on the growth of government and the ability of politicians to pick winners and losers. Then it will no longer matter who the next president is or who has the majority in the House or the Senate. We'll control our lives instead of trying to control the lives of our neighbors. People with different values will no longer fear, hate, and oppress each other. We can stop yelling and pursue our happiness as we wish in these United States of America. I have one more story here, and I'll take a detour to get to the point. My comparative economics students who are here today will understand why. Once upon a time, there lived a British capitalist who hated capitalism. One day, Robert Owen came to America to build his socialist utopia. He lured followers to a collective farm in Indiana, which he named New Harmony. Owen promised what we naturally yearn for: freedom. His declaration of mental independence gave the recipe. Men must destroy a trinity of the most monstrous evils. What are they? Private property, which we call capitalism, irrational religion, Christianity, and traditional marriage, the covenant between a man and a woman. Owen's experiment, of course, failed because it did not fit with human nature. The same incompatibility doomed all collectivist schemes, from the Pilgrims' famine, when they attempted to grow food without private property, to the 20th century mega disasters of National Socialism, Hitler, and Marxism. You know the names of Stalin, Mao, Kim, Castro, Pol Pot, and many others. While the utopian socialists never amounted to much, and their mass-murdering revolutionary cousins became toxic, a third variant of the same idea has been polluting our intellectual circles and Western politics, posing as democracy. It all began with Bernstein, leader of the German Social Democratic Party. He gave up on the proletariat and the revolution, adopting new tactics for dismantling capitalism through political activism and legislation. Those would have gone nowhere without an American president. Woodrow Wilson's 1917 invasion of Europe at the end of the First World War, seeking to make the world safe for democracy. Instead, America's intervention led to the rise of the USSR and the Third Reich. After the Second World War, Attlee's democratic socialism ruined the United Kingdom, while two Frenchmen, Schuman and Monet, discovered a way to corrupt the rest of Europe. The European Union started with the promise of a common market. And I like that idea myself. It sounds great. Okay? Get the government off the back of those entrepreneurs. Let them trade. Let the people residing in one place buy from wherever they find it cheaper or better. Well, if free trade was the individualist dream, it soon turned into a nightmare of supranational collectivism. European citizens surrendered their country's sovereignty, now some of them are trying to get it back, to unelected foreign bureaucrats. To mitigate the evils of private property, the entrepreneurs in Europe were shackled with excessive taxes and restrictions. To cure the population of irrational beliefs and to undermine the family, the secular EU elites made it a hate crime to express the biblical views of sex and marriage in public. Meanwhile, socialism in Eastern Europe, where I grew up, had collapsed. Carrying Wilson's torch, billionaire Soros endeavored to make those countries safe for democracy, you guessed it, by spilling money instead of blood. I was a college freshman in Bulgaria when the Berlin Wall fell. Within a few months, the most influential American political manipulator founded the Open Society Sofia. When in the early 90s, millions of people like me supported the opposition Union of Democratic Forces, the Soros propaganda machine conditioned us to conflate liberty with democracy. Those who survived decades of socialism under dictatorships enjoyed the new freedom to criticize the government in the mass media and at public gatherings. Much of the economy was privatized, but remained controlled through price ceilings and a Byzantine system of licenses. Political allocation of contracts and subsidies produced rampant corruption. The masses complained a lot that success, well, still depends on personal connections instead of merit. Very few believed that things could change. The rest were content with the right to vote for and against their masters, sometimes more than twice a year. Well, the anti-socialists inadvertently in this way embraced what Lenin could have recognized as adulterated socialism. Instead of fighting for their right to be left alone and the freedom to control their own lives, Bulgarians and other Europeans who self-identify politically as right of center glorify a leftist system of collective decision-making. Such a mechanism could be used to pick a name for a town library or the local sheriff for the next 4 years. A democracy with more than a few thousand voters, however, could result in the majority forcing you to eat bugs instead of beef. After 1989, the Bulgarian people exchanged their rusty Soviet chains for a European Union cage covered in rainbow glitter. Anyone who refused to embrace unconditionally the new cultural and political assimilation became a suspected Nazi or a Kremlin agent. When Moscow called the shots, the worst you could be called was a revisionist or a reactionary. Under the new regime, being a Eurosceptic or anti-globalist became a cardinal sin. America was envied for its strength, despised for its arrogance, and expected to protect the free world for free. Today, Trump doubles down on the strength and the arrogance, and he puts an end to the freeloading, which of course inspires vitriolic hatred, even among some of my relatives and friends in Bulgaria. Trump was elected twice to diminish the role of Washington in the lives of the people here and to defend their interests abroad against both friends and foes. Trump demands that Europeans strengthen their defenses instead of relying on US soldiers and taxpayers. The president is rebuilding our free enterprise system by dismantling the federal bureaucracy. Shifting power to the states here, he inspires national movements there to resist Euro integration. Barbara is now a member of the Austrian parliament, working to accomplish such goals, right? Well, Trump's foreign policies are restoring in this way a pre-Wilsonian environment where American troops will no longer police the planet in search of monsters to destroy. On top of the economic and political return to our country's foundations, the president is leading the resistance against the woke cultural revolution, defending Christianity, which is great, and mocking those who believe in an infinite number of genders, which he probably overdoes from time to time. With both of these, Trump is the ultimate politically incorrect leader. He is annihilating socialism in America and should carry his opponent's insult, enemy of democracy, as a badge of honor. The main reason for the growing number of Trump derangement syndrome cases in Europe is that most of their citizens are comfortable with the post-Cold War world order, not realizing that it has already expired. They obsess about a geriatric bear at their gates while ignoring the fire-breathing dragon on their couch. Moscow's nuclear weapons make it impossible for NATO to fight in Ukraine. Russia's economy, however, is smaller than Texas. China's GDP, on the other hand, may soon outgrow the European Union. And she, unlike Putin, has the potential to challenge us globally. For now, Trump seems to be the only Western head of state concerned about the new Cold War, which actually started 60 years ago with Nyerere's visit to Mao. That is why he ups Teddy Roosevelt's big stick ante, adding to it Ronald Reagan's loud, tear down this wall rhetoric. Trump will not invade Greenland. He rattles the EU chains for a purpose. He is not abandoning the European nations. He challenges them to remember our common Christian heritage and to act like adults. Yeah, Trump may often talk obnoxiously, but he may also be the best and final hope for the West. Thank you. We have time for a question before we head to lunch and other events. I have to give Barbara a ride to the airport. What time is the flight? Yeah. There's a question. Where is the? Oh, give me a sec. There's a microphone here. Whoever wants to ask a question, you guys like to come here?
Thank you, Alex. How do you see the tension between Trump's tariff policy with Doge, for example?
Okay, they seem to be moving the markets in opposite directions. You're right. There is a problem there, and I've heard all kinds of fascinating explanations. One is that this kind of instability, this kind of higher risk expectations in the stocks will push people to buy bonds, lowering the interest rates on our national debt at a time when Trump needs to refinance a quarter of our national debt, more than $9 trillion in 2025. So that's one possible explanation. I believe that, and I've seen this happen with his reversals. He says, I'll slap you with 10, 20, 25, 125. And then as soon as the countries beg for an audience and decide we are going to, well, do basically what you tell us to do, he puts a pause, 30 days, 90 days, maybe he will cancel most of these threats. So it's a great, perhaps, if it works. It all depends on whether by 2026 those mechanisms have pushed those countries to dismantle some of their restrictions. Because the European Union is highly restrictive to the rest of the world. Okay? It's also highly restrictive internally with the quotas that they have for different countries' producers. So if Trump's goal is to use those threats, because let's face it, most of those foreign countries need our consumers more than we need their consumers. And so maybe that's just a tactic. I don't know. There are so many different things to consider. And so tariffs, if they are implemented, if the goal is protectionism, it's not going to work. Our students know that very well. You impose a tariff on steel, well, our car manufacturers become much more uncompetitive in the global stage. Now you have to put another either subsidy for them or a tariff on foreign cars. And so you have to escalate those things. Just as Hayek and Mises explained, you try to manipulate one part of the market, it triggers so many undesired, unexpected, unintended results that you have to pile new restrictions on top of what you've already done instead of pulling back. So my hope is it's all a matter of, well, playing games to twist their hands in order to remove the tariffs that they have and other restrictions. So my hope is that by 2028, we will have a world that is depending more on free trade than it was in 2024. I hope that this is where it's going. But we will have, as Trump promised, a rocky roller coaster kind of experience. So hold on. Okay, well, time is up. 11:50, time for lunch. Barbara, would you like to?
One
Please.
second, please, just stay
Absolutely.
here for one little remark. What I have here is a piece of invention that was used actually as original, we call it Schuster's shoemaker's bulb, light bulb, that was used by shoemakers and other artisans and 2 centuries ago when we didn't have electric light, and all those artisans had to use bulbs, glass globes with water, and in order to reflect light to work to do their work when they only could use petroleum lights or candles, etc. So one of the Austrian entrepreneurs in 1900, by chance, early 1900, a family firm, he invented the snow globes. Many of you who have come to Europe know those. Mr. Gottwald, I'm sure, is aware of those and has seen them. And this company is still existing. They were almost going to die in the 1920s when we had the recession and again big tariffs, and they could not export those globes, and now they are exporting across the world. And it's fifth generation, it's entrepreneurship, it's genuity, and it's out of Austria. We didn't bring cakes or music here, only Austrian economics and a little bit of Austrian inventionism. And thank you. I'll hand this over to the president so that he reminds, because this is the logo of the roadshow, but he will remind that be reminded of the roadshow and always thinks of Austrian economics. Thank you. 25 years old.
Well, I'll be very careful then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for hosting us.